This is Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future. I'm your host, Maureen Metcalf, the founder and CEO of the Innovative Leadership Institute, where we help leaders be future ready. As leaders, we're navigating a world that's changing faster than ever, and the models we've relied on to develop ourselves and our teams are no longer enough. That's why I'm thrilled to be joined by Mark Monchek, a visionary strategist and co-creator of Disrupted, Work Reimagined, Unconference. In this episode, we'll explore how the Unconference is reimagining the way leaders learn, grow, and lead. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Maureen. I am very honored to be here after diving into your new book, after listening to some previous podcasts. The things you're talking about are exactly the things that I'm talking about, I'm thinking about all the time. So this is really, really an honor for me and important and timely.
Thank you. And full disclosure, I am one of the participants in the Unconference.
Yeah, and we particularly had three people, Neil Sahota, who also has done a book with you, Adele Wang, who talks a lot about the emotional intelligence aspect of AI, the cultural aspect of AI. So the three of you together are actually going to be kind of the thought partners. And we're actually calling people not speakers, reimagine guides, because the new way of experiencing learning, experiencing growth is not, I know more than you and I'm going to tell you what you don't know, but it's actually having people together who've had unique kinds of experiences that the leaders were coming to learn together. We're coming to share together. And the three of you in the Hacking the Pace of Change AI track are really guiding the discussion, guiding the interaction. And after lunch, approximately 1/3 of the 75 invitees are going to be going into what we call a business hackathon, really imagining what can we do to use AI to hack the pace of change and make it positive, not be overwhelmed and threatened by something that feels like it's taking us over.
Neil is also a co-founder of AI for Good through the UN.
Yes.
And this idea that AI isn't taking us over, there are also significant opportunities to use AI for the positive for ourselves, our businesses, and all of our stakeholders.
Yes. One of the reasons why we chose the three of you is I love the fact that you are demystifying AI, taking away the layers of threat, the layers of confusion, the layers of stories about it, and actually saying, what is it, what it could be, and giving really relevant use cases of how it is being used right now. Also, how you, Maureen, are learning how to use it by improving your humanness. And that's one of the things that really came across in your book and came across in the previous podcast I listened to is how important it is to improve our abilities to be human, to be aware, to be caring, to be empathetic, to be inclusive. And that is the partnership we need to have with AI or any technology and also the other people we're using it with.
AI presents some brilliant opportunities, and it calls us as leaders to be better at some of the things that we've always had to do, but we have been able to mask our deficiencies by surrounding ourselves with people who are good. That changes when we surround ourselves by machines that are also good, but may have some deficiencies. So it does call us to lead differently than we led before.
Yeah, being a writer and having learned about the power of words since I was a little kid, personally, I prefer the word limitations than deficiencies because deficiency sounds like
Yeah.
we could be more this or more that. But I think we're naturally limited because we are supposed to be doing things with other people. We're supposed to be collaborating. The myth that we have learned over many centuries since Darwin is that somehow we humans are in competition with other humans and other species, and that we have to think about life as a competitive game or a competitive exercise or what have you. I think a lot of people misinterpreted what Darwin said. I think the reality is that we are humans because we are better at collaborating with other humans. And yet we've reached the point where we have limited our ability to collaborate because there's still this other belief that we have to compete with people. And one of our mantras is collaboration is the new competition. So instead of spending a lot of time in fear of who are your competitors, who are our partners? Who are our strategic partners? And at Opportunity Lab, we have partnerships with three companies that we're very closely related to, and we have impact far beyond our relatively small team because we have access to people that have similar values, that have complementary skills, complementary relationships and resources. And man, we can do some amazing things. Our unconference team is relatively small, right? But because we have people like yourself, and then you have in your network people like Neil, we've been able to do some amazing things with a relatively small amount of material resources, but almost infinite number of emotional, spiritual, and other kinds of resources, business and technology and all of that.
You and Tammy are pioneering a new model of leadership development through your Disrupted conference. What are the core leadership challenges this model is designed to address, and why is now the time to rethink how we as leaders learn?
I'd love to answer that question, but I'd love to give you a little backstory about how Tammy and I met, because it is very relevant to the values of the Unconference and what we're trying to do. So last year, just about a year ago, I went on vacation to Jamestown, Virginia, and Asheville, North Carolina. So in Jamestown, Virginia, and I was a history major and I thought I knew something about history, but I knew nothing about history until I went to Jamestown, which is where this country actually started in 1607. So what I learned is Jamestown was basically a get rich quick scheme by the first British corporation, which was the Virginia Company, that sent 104 men and boys to find gold, silver, and spices and come back and exit their investment in 3 years. Well, guess what happened? 34 of those 104 were left after a year and a half. And then there were all kinds of conflicts with the Native Americans and later the slaves coming from Africa. So as I was going through this tour, I found out from one of the archaeologists that Jamestown will no longer exist in 50 years because it will be washed away by floods. And there is no plan by the government to avoid that. So why is that relevant to the Unconference? Because I have two grandchildren and my heart literally broke when I heard that my two grandchildren, who are now 5 and almost 3, will not be able to go to the physical place where this country started. So that made me think, I really want to do something. I want to make the rest of my life where I can have an impact on how business, specifically business, can make the world a better place where my grandchildren can actually live a better life than I am now. And hence, that really made me double down on working on impact businesses, impact to solve the environmental issues, social issues, and various things. I then met a partner I met 23 years ago through this process. And then we had developed a whole program to do this in Asheville, North Carolina. And 5 weeks later, we had Hurricane Helene.
Mm.
Hurricane Helene was the biggest storm since Hurricane Katrina. And we then pivoted and decided we are going to create an organization, which we have called Blueprint for Impact, which we partnered with to help rebuild Western North Carolina. So now I'm on this track and understand that we have to bring in businesses into this because businesses are probably the most important impact on the ecosystem and how we operate in the world. Okay, back now, fast forward to November, I get an email through LinkedIn from Tammy Alvarez, who found me on LinkedIn, read my first book, Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in Age of Disruption, and said, I am doing a conference in New York called Disrupted the Future of Work. Would you be my keynote speaker? And I said, I'd love to, but I want to learn more about this conference and more about what you're doing. And then we started to get into these discussions. And I said, I love being a keynote speaker, but I actually want to have something that is nothing like a conference, but actually is radically different than bringing people together in the traditional way. I want to bring people together in a collective, immersive, and experiential way to solve these problems and walk out with 3 things: deep insight, a relationship of a community of resources, and a specific framework that on the next Monday I can share with my leadership team. I won't have a solution, but I'll have a direction that I did not have before. So we literally changed the idea of the conference to the Unconference in the conversations of a couple of months. She came to New York and we visited Luminary, which is our venue partner, which is a community and co-working space on Broadway between 30th and 29th Street in Manhattan. And it's a women-owned, women-led space. Kate Luzio, who was a former senior vice president for JP Morgan Chase, founded this in 2019 to have a place that women entrepreneurs, business executive, and professionals could actually feel safe, empowered, and creative. And the space is very different than any other conference space that you've ever been to. It's bespoke, it's quirky, and it is fun. So that's a little of a backstory to how we got to the Unconference. And then to answer your question more directly, we decided there were three pillars or three themes that we wanted to address in our research with mid-market leaders. One is AI and technology, but we didn't want to just have AI and technology. We actually specifically, and that's why we brought you, Maureen, and Neil and Adele together, hacking the pace of change with AI, making it very specific that AI can be used as a tool to actually make your life feel more empowered rather than having it be a runaway train that is making you feel like you're lost in this swamp that is just overpowering everybody. The second is what we call the leadership reset, which is obviously very much aligned with what you're doing at the Innovative Leadership Institute, really rethinking what is leadership today. So when you think about leadership, you think about followership. And I think today's leadership, which is a lot of what I got out of your book, is not about giving people specific things to follow, but actually creating a culture and environment where people feel included, their ideas are valued, and that the solutions we come up with are collaborative and immersive and emergent, not just this direction that we are going to be working towards. And that model just doesn't work anymore. So strategic planning has been turned on its head as it has leadership. The third is culture and talent. Obviously, technology leadership is not going to work without a thriving culture and having the right talent. So that is the third, thriving cultures through empowering talent. Those are the three pillars, and we have three reimagined guides for each of those pillars.
We as business leaders have opportunities to make an impact. While the government may be rolling back some environmental regulations, companies with a longer time horizon are continuing to move forward with environmentally conscious policies because they have to. If we flip back and forth, our investment profile is a mess if we're flipping based on four-year administration policies.
I want to reflect on a point that you made in the interview you did with Christopher Washington about ESG. And you said that some companies get ESG and like it, some companies not so much. I think ESG was problematic because it was forced upon people. You should do this because you're morally better than anybody else, or something like that. And while maybe that might be true or not, businesses do things because they have to do them. I think they are doing them now more because they realize to have a sustainable business, they have to care about the environment. They have to care about the social lives of the communities and the people that work with them. And there is a governance element to that too. So I think ESG, or whatever you want to call it, is becoming more of your business strategy because you're realizing you're in a world that you can't control anymore. 55% of the CEOs that you cited the research feel like they can't control much of what they have to be responsible for, right? So wars in the Middle East, wars in Ukraine and Russia, climate change, and all of that. And then when you talked about the trends for 2024, I really liked the fact that you led with weather disruption and not climate change. Because when people think about climate change, it's big, it's overwhelming. Some people can argue with it, but nobody can argue with weather disruption. And weather disruption is the immediate impact to your business. So I thought that was a very smart way to do it. Let's not argue about climate change. Let's define how is weather going to be affecting you, and how is the fact that you can't predict the weather like you used to going to be affecting you. I want to get back to your question about the Unconference. How we start our day and how we end our day is very important in terms of how the day actually goes. In this Unconference, we're going to begin the day with music. We're going to begin the day with personal greetings and really make people feel like they have been taken care of with healthy food, nutritious food, and an environment that is very personal. We have Gary Malkin, who is a multiple Emmy award-winning composer, who is an amazing experiential pianist. He's actually created music for people who are passing on from this life, work with a lot of care facilities to use music to help people and the people in their lives who are continuing to be alive use music to actually be able to pass on. He's helped create environments in companies where people can actually reduce stress with using music. So he is actually going to play some music. We're going to have music to be a theme throughout the entire day in very subtle, kind of immersive ways. We are going to have drunk yoga. We're not going to be drinking. Drunk yoga is to make people feel like yoga can be fun and cool, and it doesn't have to be so prescriptive. You could do it anytime. So there's going to be a few 5-minute kind of intervals where we're going to do some stretching, some yoga exercises, which will feel fun and relaxing, not as prescriptive as some people think that yoga is. Throughout the day, there are going to be breaks where people can get together with each other. We're going to have a lunch up on the glass ceiling. And then I talked about the hackathons, which are going to be very immersive and collaborative. And then at the end of the day, we are going to have some more music. Now, we have a group called the Bone Tones, which are a CEO-led band that does rock, does rhythm and blues, and does jazz. And we met the Bone Tones at a event that I was doing to help North Carolina rebuild. And they were playing at the Sheraton right near the space where we were doing our event. And so my partner, Wendy White, heard this band and she loved the band. And she went up to them and says, "Hey, what do you guys do?" This is just a gig that we do part-time. We run a company called MTF Biologics, which is a $500 million nonprofit that is the intermediary between organ and tissue donors and organ and tissue recipients. They're a global leader in this. So I said, Wendy, you got to call up this group of people. I want to have them play at the event. So we talked to them, and then we ended up finding that the CEO, Joe Yacarino, has an amazing personal story. So he is going to be one of the reimagined guides in the leadership segment.
So the format blends TED-style talks, hackathons, and the immersive experiences. How does that structure reflect the shift in how leaders have to engage with learning and transformation today?
On several ways. So one, bringing your full self to your business and to the workplace. Bringing your hopes, your fears, your dreams, your vulnerability, and to be able to ask for help from whoever can give you that help, whether it's your C-suite colleagues, whether it's your board members, whether it's some of your employees, or in my case, my daughter. I have a stand-up talk that I do called My Daughter, My Mentor. And ever since my daughter was about 4, I started learning from her because she learned how to do certain things that I did not learn when I was growing up because I had different sets of parents. So my daughter's now 36. She runs a brand consultancy. When I get stuck, I say, I wonder what my daughter would do because she does things sometimes a little more gracefully. So there's going to be a lot of immersion in meeting other CEOs and other C-suite leaders as human beings in a place that is not corporate. Literally, you're going to go in there, you're going to see the art, you're going to hear the music and do the yoga. So you're going to bring your full immersive self, all of your 5+ senses. So that's the first element that is different. The second element that is different is that we are going to be building a community as a result of gathering these people. And the community is going to be obviously voluntary. We're hoping that the people who will leave say, wow, had no idea what we could do together in one day. I imagine what could we do if we met once a month, if I had a group of other CEOs and senior leaders and guides who could help me go into this very unstable, very, very unpredictable future, feeling like I'm part of a larger community that shares my interests.
I'm curious. We've got music, we've got drunk yoga, we've got art. What do you say to the executive who says, make it shorter, make it informational, and get me out of here quicker?
Wrong conference for you, or wrong unconference for you.
Go back to a normal conference.
We are focusing on a very small percentage of the thousands of CEOs of mid-market companies. We're not looking for the majority. We're looking for the people who realize that better leaders make better companies, make a better world. So if you don't want to be a better leader, if you don't want to be a better person, this is not the place for you. If you want to buy some of the content or get some of the content from your friend who went there, great. Happy to share that with you. But we want to have you feel like you were changed as a person and that you met people who you want to be in business with, in collaboration with, and you have some resources and a direction you did not have before. And that takes work. Like you were saying, you invest a lot of time in self-care, self-development. I spend probably 3 hours a day in my own self-care, self-development, learning and all that. And I feel like the more I can do, the better I'm going to be.
That in and of itself is a paradigm shift. And again, I'm imagining some of our listeners saying, I'm lucky to get 3 minutes a day to brush my teeth and go to the bathroom.
Yes, it is a very, very major shift. And I don't want to minimize it. I don't want to simplify it. I don't want to say that it's going to be easy or going to be fast. Well, if we want to use the analogy of brushing your teeth, people do brush their teeth because they feel yucky if they didn't. People would skip brushing their teeth if they didn't feel yucky, right? But they feel like, yeah, I don't want to go out with bad breath and my mouth just feels so I got to the point, Maureen, that I feel yucky if I leave and begin my day without actually having my mind being calm and feeling like I did something to make my body warm up and give it nutrition, I feel yucky and I don't have good days when I do that. So if we start to help people realize that time management is a just ridiculous concept because you can't manage time. What we can manage or influence is energy, consciousness, and attention. And you see, like your company, can be extremely effective and extremely powerful with a relatively small number of people because you're more intentional, you're more collaborative, and you don't waste time doing things that are not useful. But that takes some time and planning, and that's why spending that time up front will make the actual workday be much better. And there's a lot of work we shouldn't be doing anyway. A lot of the work we're doing is habitual from things we used to do, and we're not stopping to say, what are the things we should be doing so we can do the other things that we need to be doing?
I love the idea of managing energy, consciousness, and attention. And I think of how I have been a classic workaholic. I've done all the admin stuff at night because I'm doing all the client facing work during the day, which led me to making a lot of mistakes because at midnight, I'm just not very sharp.
Part of that is really understanding our identity and belief systems that cause our behaviors. So I was a workaholic for a good part of my life and did a lot of the same behaviors that you shared. And it did take me quite a long time to change them. And I think about why is that? So my father was born in Brooklyn in 1909 in a 500 square foot apartment with 7 siblings and 2 parents. 9 people living in an apartment of 500 square feet with 1 toilet and 1 sink. Right? So imagine 9 people bathing in 1 sink, and they went to the public baths twice a week if they were lucky. In the summer, they could not sleep in their apartment. They had to sleep on the fire escape or the roof. And my family is not that unusual. There's just a lot of families, if you go back a few generations, that had a lot of poverty and a lot of scarcity to deal with. So why am I telling you this in relationship to beliefs? Is the belief was we had to work really hard. Life is a struggle. And if we don't do everything we could do, we could end up homeless, poor, or not even alive, right? So that survival mentality really came forward. And then it got to be obviously a little bit easier, a little bit, but that still belief is that a work hour results in some kind of impact, some kind of result. And in order for us to actually survive into the next couple of generations, we have to get away from that's a mechanistic way. That's a way that happened when we created the assembly line, when we moved from an agricultural society
Mm.
to an industrial society. We have to realize that output is not directly related to input. It's not time based, I should say. It's there's not a time correlation between if I put in an hour of work, I get an hour of output. A consciousness way, really an abundant way is to say, if I am healthy, happy, enjoying myself, feeling on purpose, working with the people I want to work with, I can do an amazing amount of things in a relatively short time, but it's the quality of what I do, the impact of what I do, and the intention of which I'm doing it that makes it work so well. So here's a radical concept for you listeners. You can actually have fun doing really difficult things. I call it purpose with pleasure. The idea in my family that you could actually have fun doing difficult things would have been absurd. I think they would have thought that I was coming from another planet. But I've seen and work with people who actually have pleasure with purpose or purpose with pleasure. And there's sometimes when it's not pleasure, there's some things that are just difficult and not pleasurable and never will be. However, there's a lot of things that are pleasurable, but they are difficult. Like what we're doing now is, we're challenging, we're trying to create some really great content in a short amount of time. I'm enjoying myself. And I enjoyed myself researching this and kind of understanding what you do because it felt like it was a good thing to do and it was purposeful.
There's a phrase, what's hard is easy and what's easy is hard. It is hard to get up at 6 in the morning for me and get to the gym by 6:30. It would be easier to sleep late, have drinks at night, but that results in lack of consciousness, lack of clarity, and makes my work harder and less fun.
I kind of shifted my routines pretty radically over the years. And I'll give you an example. So this morning, I woke up around 6:37. I had been in Nashville. My flight got delayed in Atlanta. I had 2.5 hours sleep, all that. And I decided I was going to cancel one of the meetings and I was going to get a massage, take a swim, and really just focus on getting myself ready for a day. And I woke up this morning, I felt really, really good. I had about 3 hours between when I started work and I had my first meeting. And I had preparing for this interview and a bunch of other things to do. My wisdom guide said, spend as much time as possible preparing for this interview. This interview is important. Maureen has a high bar. The audience is important. And I spent 2 hours preparing. And then after that, I thought to myself, maybe I should listen to another podcast episode. And then I thought, my body doesn't feel good. So I went to the gym. I literally decided on the spur of the moment, took an hour in the gym, came back, and I was ready. So I'm learning how to have a plan and then change the plan when my body tells me differently. I think a lot of high achieving people like us learned how to make our brains control our body. And that's created a lot of collateral damage in the body because the body is part of our whole being, right? It's not the brain, the body's separate thing. It's one part of us. So I think when you learn to get intelligence from all parts of your body, from your heart, from your gut brain, from your sensations, from your mind, then you realize you're much more resilient. And in today's world, you have to be able to pivot, to change, to be very flexible. Because as Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. That's kind of a fun way of looking at what happens when you try to overplan your day. Like routines are good as long as they're flexible.
You used the word consciousness earlier. Manage your energy, manage your consciousness, manage your attention. That's what resonates as I'm listening to you is many of us, by the time we get to the leadership ranks, are no longer 20. I can't do the things I did physically when I was that age. But this idea that there is, people use lots of different words for it. Still small voice, prayer, but there's a knowing that is ever present and able to guide us. But as leaders, that's just a thing we don't talk about.
Yeah. And I think that knowing is really, really important. Go back to think about how did we get to be the way we are as a culture where we have this very rigid, very hierarchical way of doing things. And we kind of got away from the inner wisdom that we had when we were a child. When you're learning as an infant and going up to, let's say, first grade, you are learning with all your senses. You're tasting, you're touching, you're feeling, you're seeing, you're moving, right? You're learning in a multisensory way. Suddenly, if you're in a traditional education, like somewhere around first grade, you now have to sit in a chair and now you're learning with your brain, not with your whole body. Now, there's a lot of education which is changing, a lot of that, which is great. However, a lot of us at this age learned that the teacher knows something we don't know. And what we have to do is learn what we don't know. Children know a lot. If you go with what the child knows and build upon what the child knows, of course, they need to know certain things. Absolutely. Teachers are important. But we've gotten away from that multisensory way of learning. So to give you a very simple example, without thinking about the esoteric wisdom stuff, when I go in the swimming pool, and I swim like 4 or 5 times a week. I go in and I don't consciously go in with a problem, but then, there's a problem that's, lurking around in my mind that I haven't solved. I go in the pool with a problem. I come out with a solution. I literally come out with a solution. Why? Because I'm in water, which is a very, very multi-sensory thing. Like when you're in the womb, you're in water. 75-80% of our body is water. And then you're moving and you have no distraction, no external input except for the water itself. So you're in that wisdom state, and then you realize, wow, there's a whole set of things that I wasn't aware of because of all this other confusion, this extra stimuli. So I get to the signal from the noise when I'm in swimming. Some people do it and they're in nature. Some people do it in meditation. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but you have to have a practice to actually realize your inner wisdom is really powerful if you give it a chance.
When I was writing, I did it at night walking. And it was amazing how I would say, I need 2,000 steps and then I'm going to bed. I would do my 2,000 steps and then sit right back down at my computer because something I had been grappling with was resolved. As you speak, I'm pulling out the principles of things like reciprocity and generosity. As we're wrapping up, you've emphasized that this isn't a one-day event. It's the beginning of an ongoing partnership. What does sustaining leadership development look like in this model? And again, how is that different than a traditional leadership development program?
A lot of what will come out of it will be what we're calling disruptors. That's what we're calling this, the CEO, C-suite leaders who are participants say that they want. Right now, we're thinking about three elements that will be included in this. One is community. You belong to something, a group of people that you feel you share values with, you enjoy being with, and you're learning from and giving to. Insight, where you're getting insight from a whole diverse and wide-ranging community of people and resources and technology that you wouldn't ordinarily have, and some form of execution or problem solving that is very different in the mindset of it, but also in the resources you have to do it. So community, insight, and solutions are kind of the underpinning values of this community.
The approach to leadership development will also be learning, growing, and evolving.
Exactly.
Mark, it's a delight to get to hang out with you for an hour and learn more about who you are as one of the co-creators of this conference. So you're sharing your personal stories from Jamestown to what you're doing in North Carolina to ideas like reciprocity and community. Speak volumes about why I'm excited to participate in the conference.
I learned so much for myself, just, diving into your book and the podcast and all that. I was like, I really want to talk to Maureen because like the way that you shared those 7 trends, I think for 2024, there were 7. I really enjoy the trends, but not as these static things. I think the way that you talked about them was much more evolutionary and human and contextual than a lot of the things that I've heard about trends. So yeah, I feel like I'm learning every day by just being around some really cool, smart, fun people. So thank you for participating with us.
To our listeners, as we wrap up, I hope the conversation sparked new ideas about what leadership development can and must look like in today's world. The Disrupted Work Reimagined Unconference isn't just an event, it's a prototype for the future of learning and leading. I encourage you to explore Tammy's work, Mark's work, my work. What is so crucial is that we as leaders continue to evolve who we are, what we do in service and in partnership with our organizations, our communities, our extended communities.
And unconferencenyc.com if you want to learn about the Unconference.
Mark, can you give us your contact information?
Sure. Mark Monchek. You can reach me email markm@opplab.com, opplab.com. Our website, which is a lot of rich content in it, is opplab.com. And my book is on Amazon, so just search for Culture of Opportunity or my name. And I look forward to connecting with you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.